minute! Who are you?
Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Been a while, huh? Back-to-back 3-week reruns will do that to you. But this is Wanted. We'll break down a servant's history, lore, mechanics, and more. And we're picking some characters who were so obscure that even JP was sometimes like, WH Omega lol? So, I'm not confident this video will do well, but on the other hand, also, maybe you need some info. So, let's bring it all together and hit you up with a Wanted on new SSR Alter Ego. And we begin, actually, with history, because this servant is a pseudo, so there is some historical basis to talk about here. The primary name for this servant is listed as AZUMI-NO-ISORA, which is the name of a Shinto deity of the shore, patron of sailors, not quite god of oceans, but, you know, that transitionary zone. Now, not mentioned in primary texts like the Kojiki Nihon Shoki, Isora is still a very important ocean deity, especially in the region of Kyushu. Sorry, straight hair in my face. Oh, we'll leave that in the cut. Anyway, specifically, AZUMI-NO-ISORA shares part of his name with the Azumi people, a tribe and warrior clan from northern Kyushu in the modern Fukuoka region, who were first observed in the Jomon period. The Azumi were notable as seafarers and had many rituals and beliefs about the ocean, which often centered on AZUMI-NO-ISORA and on Watatsumi, also written Watatsumi, the tutelary, guardian deity of the oceans in Shinto, which is usually treated as another name for Ryujin, the dragon god of the oceans. Watatsumi is also sometimes described as a triple god controlling the upper, middle, and lower oceans, the three Watatsumi. And according to their own mythology, the Azumi people were descended from AZUMI-NO-ISORA as kind of a divine progenitor, and he has several prominent shrines in the Kyushu region. Festivals associated with Isora include Kagura, traditional dance, and boat festivals as well. AZUMI-NO-ISORA is sometimes written Azumi-no-Isora Maru, and there is a linguistic theory I found that ships in Japan have Maru in their name as a result, often, but this could just be a coincidence. Maru is a very common naming particle anyway. The Azumi people did act as the de facto naval power of ancient Japan, so it could just be kind of like a collective evolution thing. Visually, AZUMI-NO-ISORA has a couple of conflicting descriptions. In some cases, he is described as being Oni-like, or having his body covered in shellfish and barnacles. Often in traditional Kagura dances or marionette dances, yeah, there's a little bit of puppetry involved, his face is covered with a white veil. However, other sources say that the veil is to hide his blinding beauty instead, so, you've got kind of a dualism thing going on. Or just evolving depictions over time. The most famous legend relating to AZUMI-NO-ISORA has to do with the mythical Empress Jingu, who was proclaimed regent after her late husband, Emperor Chuai. Empress Jingu sought a promised land across the sea, believed to be the kingdoms of Korea, but it's not actually clear in the older myths, and sought aid from all the deities across Japan. Because of his deformity, AZUMI-NO-ISORA does not show up, so Watatsumi sets up a stage and performs a Kagura dance of the style AZUMI-NO-ISORA was fond of. Isora emerges from the ocean. He bears the two tide jewels, pearls that can cause the seas to rise and fall. There's the flowing and the ebbing gem. The tide jewels are mentioned earlier in Nihon Shoki in possession of Ryujin, in his dragon palace under the sea, and they're related to legends about his daughter Otohime and her husband Hori. Also, after returning from across the oceans, Empress Jingu was allegedly shipwrecked and almost drowned, but she was saved by Watatsumi and built a shrine in his honor. So, you kind of get this sort of, interplay where Watatsumi or Ryujin are big, important deities to kind of the overall Shinto and to history and folklore in Japan, but AZUMI-NO-ISORA was important to a specific people who were an important part of ancient functions, being a seafaring people, and you get kind of this interrelationship, shall we say. Also, because AZUMI-NO-ISORA is enshrined in the island of Tsushima, and in other areas, his existence is described in certain texts about the history and worship of the war god Hachiman, usually relating to the Mongol invasions of Japan. I couldn't find a lot of English sources that explain what this means. I don't actually think Isora was syncretic with Hachiman. It's just that in texts about Hachiman and the growing of his worship, because he is a syncretic deity between Shinto and Buddhism, a lot of those same histories also described the histories of shrines about AZUMI-NO-ISORA. Slight aside commentary, but in general, honestly, finding primary sources is a little tricky in English. It's funny how when a Western servant blows up in FGO in Japan, they'll sell out copies of Count of Monte Cristo or whatever, but, the reverse happens, a slightly more obscure Japanese servant releases in the West, and it's just like, well, I guess I have to try and trust Google these days. Anyway, or as Lucky would say, tonikaku, that moves us to the lore step. So, that is AZUMI-NO-ISORA. Not a huge wealth of sources, but we have, the famous legend and some other works. We've got some attestations, we've got historical worship, areas of influence. Who the hell are Hibiki and Chikagi? Well, so, Hibiki and Chikagi are debatable. We'll go with were, past tense. They were specifically mascots for Type Moon related to Mahotsukai no Hako, or Magician's Box, which was the name of Type Moon's mobile website from 2009 to 2014. Also to let you know where Japan was on the mobile internet, being way ahead of everybody. They had a specifically mobile formatted website in 2009. Full names, by the way, Hibiki Hibino Chikagi Katsuragi. Now, of course, this being Type Moon, Mahotsukai no Hako was not just their mobile site, but an extensive series of lore connecting Hibiki and Chikage as the central characters to their school, their part-time jobs at Cafe Anobe, and more. It has an art book, reference materials, a couple of manga tie-ins, several, at least half a dozen drama CDs. So, it's one of those things where it's definitely also still wow, there's a lot. They really crank them. The name Magician's Box is also one of the things our boy Zelrich has created, one of which is the Cafe Anobe. Basically, Magician's Boxes are buildings made with a second magic where time and space can cross over. There's listed, or not listed, but it is said that there's supposed to be 3 of them, but only Cafe Anobe is the known one, which is a cafe where worlds converge, allowing crossover gags, especially between Fate and Tsukihime-type worlds. This means that Hibiki and Chikage also had cameos in the original Carnival of Phantasm as a result. Giving them rough descriptions, as you know, mascot characters. Hibiki is described as self-assured, headstrong, kind-hearted, but eccentric. Chikagi is described as foul-mouthed and lazy, but with the ability to overachieve and a complex about her quote-unquote perfect elder sister. The two are close friends, both working part-time and going to the same school, and it is said that Hibiki pursued friendship with Chikagi and breached her cold exterior. Also, gang, I don't want to read too much into it, but this might be Yuri. Happy Pride. And of course, this being Type Moon, there's also just even more bullshit. While Chikagi Katsuragi is indeed probably just a normal high school student, because you need a few of those in your story, Hibiki Himino is anything but. She is actually a thing, person, object known as the Holy Scripture Triten, which was a text, that's right, was a book written by the dead apostle Kalbak Alcatraz, whose name, by the way, is Kalbak Alcatraz. But he wrote it about God's love, attempting to kind of perfectly document the human form, body, mind, and soul in the text, but accidentally created a model for the universe, which also created a model of a human being. It's weird and a little ambiguous, because a lot of this is still one of those things which is, technically a background detail that, Nasu never got to flesh out, but maybe will be fleshed out in the upcoming event. Kalbak Alcatraz is another, a lot of Dead Apostle ancestors, a guy who's in a background of a lot of shots. He made his famous labyrinth, the one of Fate/Labyrinth, to conceal the Triten, but one day she just decided to become a real boy and manifest somewhere as a human child, Hibiki Hibino, so she's, just rattling around out there. Really freaked Alcatraz's stuff. It is heavily implied that Mr. Cell Phone, which is a mystic code made by Zelrich, which hangs out in Anobe, and is seen in some of the Ascension arts here, actually just has Alcatraz on the other end of it. It repairs itself whenever Chikagi breaks it, and apparently she breaks it a lot because he's annoying. I think also, technically, Kalbak Alcatraz is a padlock now or something. Vampires are weird in Type Moon. Technically, he's in, Strange Fake, Episode 0. He's the antique phone that talks with Zeldritch in, the Prelude to Dawn thing. Anyway, he's in the background a lot. There's also some even more complicated bullshit going on with, the Third Ascension, and then how that, links to AZUMI-NO-ISORA. But all that'll happen in due time during the event, which is upcoming. I'm not dealing with that right now. That would add untold extra paragraphs, which would make me sound like a lunatic. To get to AZUMI-NO-ISORA / Hibiki and Chikage / something else's Third Ascension, you literally have to do the epilogue of the event or wait until the event concludes completely. So, we're literally not dealing with that shit right now. So that takes us to mechanics. Now, AZUMI-NO-ISORA Hibiki and Chikage is an SSR Alter Ego. Compared to some, they are a little higher on the attack chart than the HP chart. Not actually, more attack than HP. You usually only get that with Avengers and the like, Zerkers maybe. But still, compared to other alter egos, higher attack, lower HP values. Traits for this servant are a fucking mess, by the way. You'll notice from the image I had to use my free space, my free parking, to just list their, like, stage 1 through 2 specific and stage 3 specific fucking traits. 3 different attributes, each different ascension: man, earth, star. Stage 1 to 2 is confirmed as female gender, but unknown at 3 with the beautiful boy and feminine-looking traits. Many other different stuff. Alignments are even different. 1 to 2 is lawful good, 3 is neutral. It's a pain in the ass to talk about, but does mean you've got a lot of flexibility. We'll come back to that in a second. Anyway, talking about things which don't change. QQA BB deck, average hits, average NP gain. Pretty normal stuff. NP is AoE quick. It buffs NP generation by 20% first on water battlefields, removes the enemy's defensive buffs first, which is always a great time. And it does bonus damage to enemies with a chaotic alignment. Overcharge effects are Buster and Quick up for 1 turn first. That starts at about 10%, ends at about 30%. Skill number 1 is pretty cool. It's almost a tricolor buff, almost a rainbow card. 10 to 20% Quick and Buster up, plus NP gen up for the whole party for 3, and is a 2-3 evade on self. Pretty decent defensive skill. Second skill is a 20 to 30% battery for self only, 10 to 20% battery for the whole team, so it is 50% on them. And also, 2k to 3k max HP up for the party for 3. Not a bad defensive option as well. 3k max HP up is nothing to shake a stick at. Final skill is 10 to 20% NP strength up for party for 3, and it makes the battlefield water for 3 turns. This is very important. It also gives 2 3/3, that's 3 hits, 3 turns, buffs when you use Quick and Buster cards respectively. Quick gives the enemy 10% defense down first. Buster is crit up on self, I think also first, I forgot to note it down, for 3. So, kind of showing you how the hybriding works. Lots of passives as an alter ego. You've got a divinity variant for a small amount of damage plus, but a 300 damage cut, which for a passive damage cut is pretty good. The whole party gets 5% crit up when Isora's on the field, and also AZUMI-NO-ISORA has independent action for 8% crit up all the time anyway, and if you're on a water battlefield, you get 5% battery and 5 stars per turn. Not bad, but again, is usually terrain dependent, unless you're cranking that third skill. Now, obviously, there is a 2-year gap in my memory, but I don't recall people banging down a lot of doors for AZUMI-NO-ISORA, sandwiched between a Tiamat rerun and the Summer Aresh, Space Aresh coming up. The kit feels a little off to me. Not, bad by any means, but truly is divided between Quick and Buster, so it feels that it's not as broken as some of the more focused kits. There are kits out there that are a little more focused on one specific card type, which arguably, do break the normal mechanic cycle of the game. So obviously, as an alter ego with AoE NP and bonus damage, you have a pretty alright farming spread. You got a pretty decent run at that. You do have a lot of offensive buffs. Many of them are a little weaker because they're spread out to the whole team, but you got a lot of them. With an 8-hit quick NP and a fairly long run on their 50% battery, I do think Isora is designed more for Schrodinger Scotties, that's 2 to 3 Scotties, and so forth, rather than Koyan reloads, despite being billed as a pretty straight-up Quick Buster hybrid servant. Hey! Doing a take 2 for the back half of this, because I forgot to turn the mic back on after I step away. Anyway, the spot where I was saying, I think the main thing about AZUMI-NO-ISORA's kit is flexibility. I noted earlier, depending on your ascension, you can change Isora's stats a lot. You can change traits, alignment, gender, etc. And this leads to some very interesting combinations. As a living human servant, in stages 1 to 2, you can find synergy with past units like Voyager and Archetype Earth, and several upcoming servants who may be in demand. As an example, additionally, the Waterside buff is a very well-used terrain trait. I think it is the most called-for trait out of servants. So you get to set that up for 3 turns and gain benefits yourself, and then also be complementary to lots of servants. So that is a very broad spread of bonuses. As an example of how that works, I believe it's only on a passive that Santa Nemo has it, but Santa Nemo has a passive that's related to Waterside, and also has a buff that only affects group servants with the group trait, which includes AZUMI-NO-ISORA in Ascensions 1 and 2. So you can see there are lots of little synergies you can stack up. Though obviously there are also several summer units and other extra class units who may or may not have rate ups recently or in the past or soon, which do also relate to them. So keep that stuff in mind. The duo isn't going to be as cracked as focused units, but you can combo them in lots of ways. You have lots of little synergies. And you do have pretty decent defensive options if you're going to plug in for like a challenge quest or story content. For craft essences, you're probably going to use a 50% starter so you can fire NP right away, but if you are doing a route with multiple numbers of Scotties, you don't need to. Scotty usually comes with a 50% battery amongst one or more of them, so if you're using the multi-Scotty system, you can get away with a lot. Also, by the way, Summer Scotty is one of those units who benefits from water side, so keep that shit in mind. I think it's designed to work that way. In this case, focus on quick damage, NP damage, and probably critical strength to finish off tougher enemies who don't die to 1 NP. You'll see this a lot with farming nodes these days. High-level nodes will be like 331 or like 313 or something else weird. If you want to use the most out of Isora, you will probably, fire NP once to clear a wave. You will probably loop with all of your various bonuses, but you won't necessarily kill a really high HP enemy with one go of an NP. So, you'll do like NP Buster. If you can get some crit juice, that will actually clinch it, probably. We hope. Now on to my famous, as I always joke, other stuff. Ascensions of this alter ego should be pretty easy. You just need to mix Caster and Berserker statues. Just make sure you're cleaning out your shops, because I know some of you are spending those on class score these days. Skill levels, similarly, are only Caster and Berserker gems until the final levels, but those will demand seashells, Magatama eggs, and comet shards. Nothing brand new, but with summer events upcoming, those seashells are going to be in demand. Append skills do require brand new mats, but that's the name of the game, unfortunately. Now, for banners, much like their origins, Hibiki and Chikage are similarly obscure. They've explicitly got the Dancing Dragon Palace banner, the one that's about to start, and they get tagged in Weekly Alter Ego and the Grand Duel Extra campaigns the following year, but so far, we're about halfway through the year, so far in JP, no specific unique rate-ups. Ian does like to throw in extra banners, and I could see them as, getting a specific rate-up on, one of the anniversary, standalone banners this year in JP, maybe. We'll see, but there's no guarantees. They are limited SSRs. I don't know if I actually said that earlier in the normal spot in the intro, but they're limited SSRs. It'll be in the video description for sure. But that does mean they show up in Lucky Bag summons if you want to try and run them down, your guaranteed summons. But for banners, little loosey-goosey. And that is actually going to be about it. And, hey, for absolutely no reason, I mention this for no reason at all, Lucky and I have been streaming Okami lately, and as of the time we're recording this, we're probably going to do the final episode of the stream series next week if everything goes to plan. So that'll be on Monday if you want to watch that, and like I said, go back and maybe check those out. There's definitely no crossover potential there. No reason why you would want to watch those while you're also watching this. But that is going to be the end of this wanted video for today. Make sure you are subbing to the channel so you can stay tuned for more. If you like this video, obviously do like it. But as I said, you want to jump on the channel and check out some things. If you want to know more about the Dancing Dragon Castle event, check out last week's episode of our podcast, Let's Talk FGO. That one has a breakdown of the event along with also lots of other stuff going on. So check that out if you want to see about what's going on. And if you want to see how myself and my co-host Lucky feel about the event story and mechanics, be sure to check up when there's a new episode of Let's Talk FGO this week. So that's, one of your reasons to sub. You can leave your comments on this video, but also consider joining our Discord. We have rolling threads, and we have discussion channels for FGO, and also channels for lots of other discussion. Come hang out. And I think that's all the usual call to action rigmarole. Make sure to consider joining the channel memberships, and of course, consider supporting us on Patreon at our higher tiers. The second tier and higher, honestly. You could have gotten this video early. You can also listen to audio of Let's Talk FGO and other stuff early at any tier. There's a Patreon channel or a Discord. Stuff like that. Things that you can check out. Gengus. So consider supporting us there. I will have more words for all of our wonderful, beautiful patrons in just a second. But first, a musical outro. And before we go, special shout out to all of our patrons, but especially Adam DeHarp, Blackster G, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, JDV8000, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, and Sharvor. Thank you for all your support, everybody. Consider supporting us on Patreon if you want to see us do more.